Welcome to RPG with DBJ. Hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Thank you very much for being here and for taking part in the show later on in your morning, afternoon, and evening. Today, we're going to talk about immersion. This concept comes up, it's a high minded concept as well in tabletop role playing games, and this will relate to game design. But over here on our corner of the interwebs, we talk about tabletop role playing games, especially hard science fiction. And hey, Drew, what's going on? So I'm going to give you some of my best practices, and we're going to get a lot of these best practices right up front, uh, just from my experiences, and you can compare, contrast, and steal from or tell me I'm just full of BS if you don't agree. But these are the things that I feel can immerse. So let's first of all let's get on the same page as far as definition. Many times when um, uh, we hear about immersion from the opposite end. Sometimes we'll see social media posts or videos about uh, something pulled me out of the movie. I was reading the book, but something I wasn't quite connecting with it. Some I just wasn't in. I didn't feel like I was into the situation or the activity. Something kept pulling me back out. Immersion oftentimes is a tunneling effect where for lack of a better term, we ignore the outside world and we feel further and further drawn into this fictional arena. A very good movie maker, for example, the last time I felt immersed in, say, a movie was Dune Part 2. I felt like I was being drawn in and my periphery was closing in, and all I saw was engaging in what was presented on the screen. There was a television show, Shogun, and I really love this Shogun, and I was pulled in, and I'm so glad I saw the subtitled version of it and got to hear and see the characters speak and behave in that manner instead of listening to the dubbed version. Uh, Things like that, and in tabletop role playing games, oftentimes we want to become immersed to the point that, and I've mentioned this before, that the memories, the actions and reactions and memories of what took place in a fictional theater of the mind um, embeds itself in our memory as if we were really there. Not me saying my character did something, but when I look back on the thing, I remember it as if I was standing there. I was standing on the precipice of this of a pit, the bottomless pit, and I could hear the sounds of demons and devils below me, and I see a faint glow and feel my soul being pulled out. And when I describe those events, I describe them as if myself were in that position, and that's the ultimate of immersion. So there's some best practices I think we can do. These are about five plus a few extra I think we can really engage in. So first of all, um, no one else can force you to become immersed. It is an active decision by us to engage in immersion, and as long as everyone is placing in not just the same amount of energy, but has the same goal, you have a greater chance of being immersed. So, our first rule is play the theme and setting that is in front of you. Okay. So, for hey, what's Drew? Drew says, for me, immersion in RPG is like immersion in every other media. I want to feel drawn into the flow of the game, not necessarily become my character. Okay. And I don't mean that you have to act. Listen, don't get me wrong. You don't have to act like your character, right? You don't have to talk in their voice and call and respond in exactly the way your character. I don't mean that. But there are people who get immersed in, say, uh, poker, or get immersed in a family cookout and playing games on the side, and the distractions of the rest of your life fade away and you are involved in the game. So um and I do believe that an ultimate goal in role playing is that after the game, not necessarily during the game, but afterwards, we start to recall these in a in a many times our memories are attached to our feelings, and if we can attach those two when we later recall events that happened, we tend to feel like we were there. And I think that's an ultimate goal. You can't really force it, you have to be involved in it. So one of them is play the setting and theme in front of you. So if you decide to play a Call of Cthulhu game, a horror based Lovecraftian game, play the world and setting that you are in. So um, sometimes players want to play horror as if they were playing high action fantasy Dungeons and Dragons. My character's never afraid. I'm going to be a gun toting modern day individual. The horrors in the world, I'm never scared. And if that's not the game, don't play that game. Don't play the game like it's not, or the themes, the thematic elements of the game, um, as if play them as they are intended to be played. Yes, in horror movies, we wonder, why don't they drive away? Why don't they just escape? Why do they run upstairs? Why do they do? Just embrace that. Just just be part of the fold. Sure. Does that mean you may make some uh, ridiculous ridiculous decisions in the moment that may be counter to what a person should do, but the theme suggests otherwise? I say engage in the theme element. There's a game called Tales from the Loop. And what I love about, and maybe I should have made it this theme. In There's a opening when you open the book in Tales of the Loop, and a lot of indie games will do this. So instead of the classic paragraph, this is a role playing game. What is a role playing game? Instead, they will give you like 4 to 10 truths about the world, and embrace those truths, the thematic elements of the world. For example, in Tales from the Loop, you play children, and you can play a character, I believe, from ages 12, I think 10 or 12 to 17. The minute you turn 18, you're an adult and you leave the game, at least concerning Tales from the Loop. It takes place during the 1980s. And there's other games like Kids on Bikes. And one of the rules of theme in the game is that adults are distant and oblivious and cannot help you. And it is a reality of this game setting. So, as while it would make perfect sense for as a child to run to the adults and the authorities, like the police or teachers or whatever, and say, pointing over in the distance, there's something going on over there. Can you handle it? That's not the point. You're supposed to be kids on bikes getting involved in a whole lot of shenanigans, and no, the adults will not believe you. Now, you could show all kinds of evidence why they should get involved, but not in this game. And so I think embracing the theme of the game, if it's high action, don't create a character that is all cowardly and wants to sit on the sidelines. Play a character that wants to get their hands dirty. Now you could there's a you could make a character that feels cowardly, but as a player you keep getting involved. But like I hear you, true. Yeah, the police can be pretty useless too. But the theme of that game, of a game of playing children that get involved in a whole lot of shenanigans and ride their bikes up and down the street, is that that's who you play. And no, you can't rely on the authorities to help you out. And I think in a lot of uh, thematic games, sometimes players are not playing the game in front of them. They are playing another role playing game, consciously or subconsciously, and trying to overlay it in this. It's like people who play um who prefer to play a power fantasy, but they're playing in, say, the OSR, or they're playing in a highly lethal horror game, and the two just don't mix. um Secondly, a side note to playing theme and playing in the theme and the setting, is that we're going to pick number two, and that is play the game in front of you. And this is more of a meta of a play the game in front of you rather than play the theme and setting. So when I say play the game in front of you, don't constantly bring up, this game would be better if we were playing something else, or my character would be better at doing things if I was higher level. Um, Play the game in front of you. Now, this is a absolute best practice for players. Don't bring up the fact that you've played this game at a more intense level. Don't bring up other games you've played that were similar to it. I know we can get distracted. I get it. Uh, if you are a fantasy D20 player, maybe there's various iterations. There's dozens and hundreds of them that are out there even today as versions of Pathfinder First and Second Edition, Level Up Advanced Fifth Edition, Tales from the Valiant. We've got 2024 coming out. We have old 2014 fifth edition, and then you can go backwards to fourth and third and 3.5 and blah blah. Okay, don't worry about those other editions. Play the one that's in front of you. If you decided to play BECME or BX or Morkborg or Shadow Dark, play that game. Don't play other games. And in other words, don't compare and contrast to other games, other events, other interactions, especially if you are doing it in a manner that has a negative connotation to everyone else at the table. So, it would be like, it's like listening to a comedian if you're the type that loves comedy and constantly going, oh, I know this other comedian told a similar joke, but it was better. Yeah, don't do that. Play the one in front of you. Nothing needs to be, we don't compare like every movie to Godfather and just roll our eyes and go, oh, it should be Godfather. Even though today I kind of feel like more and more people are just, they always fall into the 0 or 10. What score do you give it? I give it 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. If not, it's 0, 0, 0, 0, right? You hear in the dating blogosphere and vlogosphere, it's just like, oh, this person isn't perfect. They're a 0. It's like, what? Doesn't need to be that way. Play the thing in front of you. Doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be good for you. And by immersing yourself in that, I think it's best. Small things. Don't use dumb names for NPCs and for your character. Make a name that fits into what's going on. Don't bring strange anachronisms into the setting or game that you're playing that normally wouldn't be there. Don't uh, describe your character or engage in behaviors that are not part of this particular role-playing game. Like, hey, I want to play fantasy, but I know how to make gunpowder. I want to make gunpowder in this fantasy game, and everyone looks at you like, okay, stop bringing your real world. I know how to make a nuclear bomb out of out of uh, off the shelf warehouse, chemicals or something like that into this fantasy game. If it exists in the game, use it. If not, don't do that. Play this game. A third practice is, and I think this is one of the most important, and that is modulate your energy. And don't base it on good or bad outcomes. Or in other words, use it, be involved in a game during all the bad times as equally as your good times. So if you're somebody who likes to pout and have a fit and you're very emotional, you might want to curtail that or focus it in a different region. So for example, we know we all have someone, including ourselves, that when we pick up a randomizer, dice, cards, whatever, click a button or roll physical dice, that they always turn out bad for us. And we just feel like we're like a magnet for bad outcomes. And my answer to that is, you want to be immersed? Don't pout. Don't check out because bad things are happening to your character. Even if your character is out of commission, be involved in what's going on. Drew, thank you very much for being here, has a game where even if your character is out of action, you still remain in the gameplay. And I say remain in gameplay whether that happens or not. Be a fan of everyone. Stand on the sidelines and act and react just like everybody else. Ooh and ah, and clap and say, "Oh man," and give that same energy. Now, that energy doesn't necessarily mean you need to be happy when bad things happen, but the same energy should be involved when you've been rolling crits and doubles, or you've done, you've been a badass. Yeah, now be a fan of everybody else that makes the same rolls at the table. When your dice aren't in your favor, just smile on the face. Just, oh man, again. Oh, it's like, man, I am really in a bad spot here, guys. And just keep that energy level up. Similar to how if you've been on this channel more than 5 minutes, you'll notice that I modulate my intensity and tone in my voice, and I've done it enough that sometimes I don't realize that I'm doing it. I like to ebb and flow with my intensity to get across an idea, and then there's also times where I'm also trying to um, I'm trying to fill space because there's something in my head. There's gears turning, and I'm trying to get to my next point, and I'm like, I can't remember. So I'm trying to fill the air as well. So, because if you're listening in, I'd also make sure that you're not listening to dead air while I sit here, look up in the sky, and go touch my chin, fold my arm, and go, hmm. I want to have that energy, and so modulating your voice as a game master, sometimes you might have to get a little ASMR and loud whisper to the characters. You walk into the dungeon, cobwebs strewn in every corner. Your light casts moving, strange shadows in a place that hasn't been touched in a millennium. You walk into the room, and beneath your feet crunches bones brittle as parchment. Or, it's these kind of things, and you want to be soft and low and danger and stretch out the moment as long as you can, like a taut string on a stringed, musical instrument, pulling a thread, knowing it's about to snap. But then when the action happens, you want to get everybody moving and quick, hurry up, give me an answer, What are you going to do? Are you going to move? Are you going to hide? Are you going to attack? Okay, you're going to attack and move. Okay, next, declare your action, whatever. Okay, I'm going to go back to player number one. What are you going to do? Okay, I looked up in a book. I realized what the spell's going to do. It's a 60-foot radius. Is that radius or okay? It doesn't matter. You're able to, use your area effect to get all of the goblins. Great. Okay, I'm going to cast my spell and put them all to sleep. All right. Now, what are you going to do? Et cetera, et cetera. And using our voice and our intensity and being, like I said, being a fan of the players as being there either physically or emotionally or psychologically, rub the shoulders of the player that's sitting on the sidelines, getting ready to get back in the action and talking to air, giving in their ear, like the corner crew that's for a boxer, right? The boxer's spitting into the bucket, and someone else is coming with the Gatorade, and someone else is rubbing the sweat off their brow, and someone else is telling them, okay, maybe you should do this, you should do that. You're great. Keep it up. You've got the energy. You got this, man. And the boxer gets ready to get back into the action, and we want to be that for everyone else at the table. And if we are all that way, we can become immersed in it. Now, is the hey, get back in the action a little bit meta? Of course. But later, when we emotionally feel what happened, we can attach that feeling to the memories, the actual events that happened, and merge the two. Yeah, the real horror was the dead air we encountered along the way. I tried to be a good announcer or content creator, and I can only. I mean, I'm a one-man army, so I can only do what I can do, and I try to be engaging if I can. So thank you there, Drew. What else? Here's another best practice that I feel is necessary for immersion, and that is how do I say? I'm trying to think of of a short, sweet phrase, and I haven't been able to come up with one. So, play the theme and setting, play the game that's in front of you, Uh, be a fan. Be engaged in what's going on. Like, don't be a negative nanny. Don't check out. I guess this is the part two to this. Don't check out. So what I mean is, don't get on your phone. Don't get distracted by a video. Don't play other video games. Don't say, I mean, yes, you have to take bio breaks. Sometimes you have to take a bio break, but if you be right back, don't leave the VTT or the table itself or something because you're mad because your character just got knocked out. Just step away. If your character is paralyzed or knocked out or something, go, oh man, but engage. Now, if you have to step away just a little bit to collect yourself, maybe your character did die, you're feeling a little emotional, and you don't want to take that out on everybody else, then step away, come back, and become engaged in it, even if it takes a little bit of time for you to get involved. Here's another one. Give grace to everyone else at the table. The spotlight should be moved, and it is not the game master. And I hate this advice. It feels like game masters tend to be the central spoke in a wagon wheel, and that's not the case. It's actually more of a fractal web where everyone should be connected with everyone else at the table. And especially for players, you have as much power and responsibility to engage everyone else into the game that you're playing. So if you are grabbing the dice for the 8th time while everyone else is twiddling their thumbs, stop and say, hey, before we roll the dice, let's just move literally just say, let's move the spotlight to someone else. Hey, let's keep the tension right, here to see whether I fall off the cliff or not, and move it over to someone else. Stop yourself and suggest to everyone else, no, someone else should get their turn. Someone else can speak up. It's not about me. I know I split the party. Go to the other group. Default to other people as equally as you can to their actions, their desires, their willingness to be in the game, their intensity. I understand that we can get so immersed that we get tunnel vision and ignore the fact that we are there with other people. But tabletop role-playing games are intrinsically a collective engagement. It is not just you and the game master, it's you, the game master, and all the other players. And as a player, I definitely want to default to other people. And we're going to get to our other best practice here, and then we'll talk about other things. Drew says, as someone with ADHD, I have to say, I think it's bad advice to tell people like me they should not look at their phone or just focus on a game, since often that will make it only worse. Well, I would say that we have session 0, that if you have certain issues, and those issues, I know some people are just like, I don't like safety tools. And I think sometimes people fail to realize that session 0 can come at any time. And that could be something as simple as, like you mentioned, having ADHD, and letting people know that, listen, every once in a while, I'm going to have to step away, or I have a fidget widget, cube or something in my pocket, or something like that. Like, I can't sit still and sit in front of the camera. I have to get up and walk around. If you let people know that up front, I think that's different. Yes, I hear what you're saying, but I think that's a different concept. Also, for people who don't like safety tools, I say poppycock, right? I say, what happens if you just had a death in the family from a pet or a loved one? Now, this could happen in session number 47 in your 3-year-long campaign. But if something happens during the game that might trigger, like, for example, let's say this encounter was supposed to have a coven of old hags, and it sounds like I'm being disrespectful to your grandmother, who was great to you in your life, then letting me know that up front might be like, oh, I'm not going to use that encounter. I'm going to use something else, right? So letting people know there's nothing more important than the real human beings at the table. There isn't anything more important than that. So yes, you are correct, Drew. But people who have medical issues, people who have social issues, someone who, heck, someone says, listen, I can only play for like 2.5, 3 hours, and then I gotta go. Then okay, all right. Well, we will discuss how your character steps out of the game, and that's not rude. That's you expressing what has to happen because of real life. So yeah, definitely real life. This goes to um, another behavior or something to get ourselves immersed in the game, and or rather not detract from being immersed in the game, and uh, that is, don't become a well actually. And I have an old video that I think some people had some fun with, because I literally titled it "Well Actually dot dot dot." um, don't be a well actually. This kind of goes back to play the game in front of you, but we we in the tabletop role playing community sometimes are socially awkward, and we can tend to default to facts over the fiction, and being correct isn't always right. So yes, you may know the world of Dune and have read all the books 5 times over and have memorized all the details, but it might not be important for you to recall all the different characters of the Bene Gesserit simply because we're playing the game Dune at this very moment. Being right isn't always being, and being accurate isn't always right. So sometimes it doesn't matter whether a word is mispronounced, whether a location on a map isn't exactly where it's supposed to be, where how many moons are in the sky over Tatooine or suns over Tatooine doesn't matter at this very moment. And listen, for the most part, before you speak up and go, well, actually, and do a 45-minute dissertation of the history of this fictional location. um, if you wanted to do that, open up a history book, study the novels, engage in the anime that you love. Do that on your own time. Look up the Wikipedia page. Do that on your own time, right? In or do that on this channel, right? But if you're playing the game, I hate to say this, but sometimes just shut the hell up. For the most part, we're more brilliant than a little bit. We will realize we misspoke anyway, right? So if you give somebody 5 minutes, they'll go back and go, "Oh, I meant 2 moons, not three, or whatever, right? Oh, I forgot that race does breathe methane. I forgot about that, but whatever. But you're still in a situation. Let's just say that you had a rebreather on or something, right? If it's in science fiction or fantasy or whatever the case may be, um, well, in real medieval times, sure, but we're not playing real medieval times. We're playing this game, and this game doesn't have um, dysentery and polio and scarlet fever, and it's the well in real media. I remember being corrected one time when I was saying something about having how to control magic, or ways people would control magic in fantasy medieval times, and someone was like, well, in real medieval times they didn't have investigative services, and I said, yeah, sure, but in real medieval times there wasn't real magic either, right? Like, in this game, if this setting doesn't have the thing, then don't worry about it. Don't be corrected. If the history that we are involved in or the details we're involved in have zero bearing on the next die roll, then don't worry about it. Later on, you can say, "Oh, just want to let you know, Elminster actually wasn't around during this time period," and the game master can say, "Well, yes, but in my setting, in the way I'm describing my fantasy, my Forgotten Realms, Elminster's here. And oh, by the way, how do you really know this character was never there ever?" Right? It's funny because it reminds me of like a character will be gone for 10 years, return, and sometimes we will head canon a thing so much that we over canonize the setting and the themes and the descriptors. I remember when Harrison Ford came back as Han Solo in uh, The Force Awakens, and you're talking like 30 years later. And people had complaints that his clothes weren't the same. And I'm like, 30 years later, I'm surprised he still got a similar haircut. Like, what? People change their underwear. Like, they're, if enough time passes, things don't necessarily have to be exactly the way they were supposed to be in the canon, and there's no exception to it whatsoever, ever. Um, you know, Talking about Star Wars itself again, the idea that, well, there weren't supposed to be any Jedi. And I'm thinking, that seems a little bit unrealistic. I mean, all the Jedi were killed, all of them, to a one. It's hard to literally murder kill an entire population of anyone, let alone in a fantasy tropish game. So yeah, engage in the tropes and try not to be pushing the glasses up. Well, actually, do that on your own time. Do that before the game or after. But if it doesn't matter, then it doesn't matter. I've been in so many of these intellectual spirals that hurt my brain. I was just like, so you said all that to say what? Oh, well, nothing. Right? Drew says, it is fine to forget details about the Forgotten Realms. It is in the name, thus it is allowed to be forgotten there. Yes, exactly. I mean, and despite the sarcasm, that's actually true, right? Like, if you're going into a place that is supposed to be made of myth and legend, even in science fiction, there are places where we don't know what's over the I was about to say event horizon, but yeah, we don't know what's over the event horizon, right? We don't know. We have rumors and we have speculation. We can posit. We could we have some real world I saw with my own eyes accounts, but we know even human beings are um, don't even have accurate memories of an event. Who's to say that this is exactly what happened? No, maybe some say, others posit, even more believe. And yeah, these are rumors. And why wouldn't we embrace? I love uh, I love what's it called? Um Darn, my brain just farted. Narrators that you can't count on. Wow, I can't even remember the word. Unreliable narrators. I know, Drew. I know you got it. I know you got it before I did. Unreliable narrators are an excellent tool when it comes to storytelling. Yeah, let the villagers call the people dragon folk. Right? You you don't know. Are they lizard folk, or are they draconians, or are they dragonborn, or are they, who knows, right? You know, which brings me to another good practice, and that is act and react within the fiction. Yeah, I knew it. You and I, right there, right? Yeah, Drew, right on the same page. I know it. Yeah, unreliable narrators are excellent tools. As a matter of fact, I love unreliable narrators that speak about the very games that we read, even in science fiction and fantasy and anything in between. Having the people speak in a voice means that there is an opinionated voice, and within the setting, an opinionated voice means that they could be wrong, or that they perceive history in a manner in which may not be true. There, for example, I love in Planescape. The original Planescape was written with unreliable narrators with opinionated voices. It was as if a real person were documenting their travels into the nine hells and the abyss and Tartarus and all these other planes of existence. And from the point of view of the devils down in the nine hells, it makes perfect sense that the world looks and appears that way, that the planes of existence. I don't understand, right? They're just like, the strict rules from the upper planes are horrible. And I like that. I like that. So another thing is play within the narrative and fiction that is in front of you. So yes, as players, we know that the meta of horror is that you know, there's a number of tropes in horror, and one of those is you have a bounded area of horror makes you scared when you have limited space to run. And uh, a major trope of horror is not being able to escape a small bounded location. Most horror takes place in a building, underground, trapped somewhere, unable to escape. And yes, it seems a little bit foolish, like, when the walls start bleeding and the ghosts start keeping you awake and the shadowy figures start walking down hallways, that like the Scream movies, they pointed out the ridiculousness of its own genre while literally engaging in the genre itself. If you're playing a horror movie, you know grab the candlestick and walk down the hallway by yourself. I remember we played in a game, and one of the players went and pulled the spark plugs out of the car that we could have escaped in because the game master forgot that we drove there and had the keys to the car. And the player took out their emotional response to being rejected to another player and engaged in the meta by shutting down the car that we had. And we were just like, why did you do that? And then in hindsight, we were like, oh, that's right. Because the next step would have been like, get the hell up in the car and drive away. And it was pretty funny in hindsight. But at the time, we were just like, why did you take the car keys and spark plugs and throw them into the woods? Like, what the hell did you do that for? And it was just like, because you rejected me, fold arms, pouty face, right? And it was pretty fun. Drew says, I like being an unreliable narrator as GM, which is one of the reasons why I avoid talking in second person for the characters and describe the world in an unreliable manner. And now, mind you, this is a weird thing to say. Um, we as game masters should be honest with our players while simultaneously being unreliable, if that makes any sense. So we are as game masters, we are the eyes and ears, we are the senses of our players, and sometimes our senses can be quite unreliable. You may feel that all the eyes are on you when you walk into the nightclub or the dinner party and feel like everyone is watching you as if you are they're undressing you with their eyes. That doesn't necessarily mean it's true, but your character may have come from humble beginnings and you're trying to socialize with a bunch of rich folks and feel self-conscious. And so you may feel everyone is looking at you, which may not be the case, and oftentimes isn't the case because most people are so narcissistic they're thinking about themselves and not about other people. And if they are thinking about other people, maybe they should get a life. Think more about themselves, right? So yes, we are the eyes and ears. Yeah, like Drew says, like giving inanimate objects agency. Yes, I do that too. With the shadows creeping in as if they want to suffocate the light. Thus, I am not telling what they perceive. Right. Well, I would argue that you are telling them what they perceive, which we're getting into. I know we're making a literary circle here in terms of describing things, like making metaphors and similes, and like you said, the shadows are reaching into you, but they're not really doing that. But the characters perceive their world that way. I know there are plenty of times where I've gone into places that I was unfamiliar with, and I perceived it that way. I perceived myself being the center of attention, or feeling like the shadows are alive because of the light that dances. I felt a cold shiver up my spine, despite the fact that there's sweat on my brow. I felt that way. Now, is that the physics of the world around me? No. But did my brain subconsciously form, uh, bring to light things that are an emotional like lizard brain result. Yeah, 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 yeah. So I would dare say that you are describing it exactly as they perceive it, right? Not as damn it, I'm tripping over my own words. Um, Describing things from the point of view of the players, and then as players, embracing the fact that you are perceiving the world through the eyes of your character, I think is a best practice rather than the meta. The I know this is a terrible analogy, but let's get into it. So there's often this argument whether my character in fantasy would know whether trolls are vulnerable to acid and fire. Now, I would contend that trolls, vampires, ghosts, goblins, things like that are common enough, or at least the folklore and fairy tales of these very beasts in fantasy are common enough that we would know that a Medusa doesn't like its own reflection, or that a troll hates the sight of fire, or that a vampire can be held back or must be invited into a home or held back by garlic or religious symbols and doesn't like light or something like that. For me, I feel like folklore would alert people that, I mean, hell, they don't exist in the real world, and yet we even remember these things, right? So I think in folklore, I think that would be a real thing now, and that the players would know it. But here's another thing: if we engage and act and react to the fiction that's in front of our characters, maybe we don't want to, despite the fact I know what power level my character is. I don't want to be surrounded by 30 goblinoids, or maybe because of the light, my character only sees 5 things step out of the shadows, but hears the chittering and the growls. I can hear the voices of dozens and dozens more. Now, as a player, I may look down at the VTT or the miniatures on the table, and I know there's 27 of them, but my character only sees 5 of them because of the light dome cast by my torch or my lantern, right? And so I may react only to the 5 that are presented in front of me. What maybe a player does something, closes their eyes and calls upon the faith of the 7 or something like that. Ooh, that's a little Game of Thrones close, but you get my point. And my character is in awe of the power that this person can draw from the deities from above. Whereas in the game, I know they just cast a spell, but my character reacts in a great way. I remember we had to make some saving throws, and I had a character who was like an elf. He was kind of like I think he was barbarian or something, and another character was playing like a dwarf who was kind of a knight samurai type of character. And the dwarf kept making the saving throws. Of course, they were like Constitution saving throws, and I was failing mine. So I became jealous of the dwarf, not because of anything the player did, but I reacted to I feel weak. This person is strong. I'm jealous of this person, and was constantly trying to point out like weaknesses of the character, knowing that I was wrong, right? Like above board, the meta, I was like, no, my character is jealous. I'm not jealous. I'm not mad that you made rolls or something, but my character is. But my character was kind of being a little bit childish and a bit pouty, until my character's life was saved, and then I became a devotee of the dwarf and perceiving things from the mind's eye. I'm not talking about playing a character that's what my character would do. I'm saying perceive the world through the eyes of your character. I brought this up before. I remember there was a player who was very much a carouser and seductor, and encountered a succubus, and the player was like, "No, I failed my saving throw. Like, don't even bother rolling." Oh, they were like, "What?" And like, why would my character resist it? Like, that's what my character's about. Yeah, it makes it hard. I mean, Yes, it puts us in a horrible position, but I think it makes sense that my character would fail a saving throw. And we were just like thrown aback and we're like, I guess that makes sense. And then we had a new interaction where the game master was like, oh, the succubus is thrown aback because you didn't resist her wiles, you fell into it, and then the succubus became an ally to the player character who succubus hated the rest of us, but became an ally and kind of became like attracted to the player character. It was kind of fun, and it became like an NPC, a little bit, well, very much unreliable, right? But it was very cool. So I think playing the game in front of you, engaging the themes and the setting that is presented in front of you, um, don't dream about and keep comparing this game to other games, or I know our character's third level, but I sure would be able to do something better if I was seventh level or something like that. Don't do that. Play the game in front of you. Be engaged. These, I think, are best practices. Move the spotlight around. Um, After all of our very real and very human um, issues are taken care of in our session zero, despite those, be engaged in a game, right? There may be things that are will pull us out and will distract us because real life. No, there is nothing and there is never any reason for at all for any reason, period, uh, for a game to supersede the human beings at the table. All human beings at our games are more important than any rule or ruling or anything. Despite all that, once we get those issues settled out, I think that stay engaged in the game, and of course look through the eyes of your character. Maybe, just maybe, um, we already know that you have plenty of dice to take out the troll, but through the eyes of your character, you become hesitant, or at least describe yourself as being such, right? So I think there's plenty of other things we could do to become immersed. There are, we can engage our senses. There are games like Ten Candles and Dread and the Terrible RPG and so many others that use physical props, a Jenga tower, actual lit candles, a sheet of paper. There are many things that are physical props and that can pull us in. Sometimes playing role playing games in a brightly lit room is not the best thing. Maybe playing it in a dark, dank basement was the best thing to draw us into our dark dungeons and fantasies and whatnot. Not sure how many cats would be jumping up on our parchment during our adventures, but yeah. Yeah. Drew says getting engaged with the game is fine, but don't get married to it. Yes. Be well, I would dare say maybe we should be polyamorous with our polygamous theories and practices, right? There is no need to conform to just one partner. Maybe we have enough love and attention in us that we could spread our, oh shit, I was about to say some other words. We can spread ourselves amongst other settings and feelings and things like that. And lastly, I would say if you agree to play in a game, be true to that agreement. If someone says, "Hey, I want to run a Western game where we're gunslingers and six shooters riding on horses and through the ancient, not ancient, but yeah, well, ancient in our past Midwest of the United States, but we're going to play Deadlands. There's ghosts and vampires and werewolves and other big bads out there, and we're riding on the trail out in the middle of nowhere or something like that, and you agreed to play that game. Play that game. Look at the rules, study a little bit of the setting, play a game, play a character that belongs in that setting. Don't make a Jedi, don't make a knight, don't make a samurai. Well, I suppose depending on what historical time period, there would be cowboys, samurais, European explorers, um, uh, native indigenous peoples all at the same time. I guess that would be possible. But despite that small window of time, pirates and everything, yeah, despite that small window of time, play the game that's in front of you. Play a person that would fit into the Wild West, not someone who's like, well, because of my modern sensibilities, I don't agree with it. Now, we can all agree to say, hey, our characters have a modern sensibility, but everyone else in the world doesn't. We had this issue when we played a 1920s Call of Cthulhu game, and all of us, we collectively decided to play characters that were, dare I say, um, minorities during the 1920s in Western Texas. Uh, you can use your imagination as to the kind of reactions we got from the locals, even from law enforcement in the 1920s when all of us were playing. I think someone was from India. We had a Jewish character, um, um, black character, a gay character. Like we were all minorities in what were considered lower class folk at that time in the 1920s. And for the reason, this was actually before our purpose was that we were supposed to be the investigators, and we were sent from the big city basically out into the Midwest. And um, me and all of our friends, we're from the East Coast. We're from Philadelphia, which is like a tri-state area. Pennsylvania, Delaware, and New Jersey is known as the tri-state area, at least at confluence. And we were going basically out into Hicksville. And no, we couldn't rely on law enforcement, and we couldn't rely on the locals. So we all decided to play characters that basically we couldn't trust them. And dare I say, the locals were just as horrific as the horrors we were trying to stop, which also became a little bit more realistic. And we decided to play the game that was in front of us. Now, that's not an excuse to abuse people. Like I said, the human beings at the table are always more important than anything else, which is always a reason to override anything. I've listen. I've been around this gaming community for 45 years now, and Drew can contend to this as well. How many times have excuses been made to become misogynistic in the gaming community, or rationalize away hatreds and gatekeeping and things of that nature? And I contend to you that there is no excuse for any of that, because there's nothing more important than the humans at the table. There's no reason to say, a young lady that decides to join in your game, and you make that player's life miserable by making that character's life miserable because, air quotes, the game world says that women should be in their place. And it's like, well, no, characters should be able to engage in the game world as equally as everyone, because the players should be able to engage in the game world, which means there should be plenty of opportunities, even if that is a real thing in your world. Oh, I don't know, to punch people in the throat to show that they're how much of an asshole they are, right? If you're going to have barriers, create situations where players can overcome those barriers. And things like that should have been talked about well ahead of time. So yes, can we engage in a lot of engagement parties and flirtations with our games, and intense romantic um, 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 things? Yeah, we can engage in our games that way. Maybe getting married to a specific game. We already have that situation with 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, right? So many people got pulled into the game through those rules, and so many of us play so many other indie games that we feel deserve so much more attention. And it's like, sometimes to others it feels like we're cheating on our fantasy D20 games, and we're not. We are just we have a lot of love in us. So guys, thank you very much for being part of the show. Not many of you stopped by today, which is fine. You guys are busy. We'll engage in some more things. I'll go back to the Fermi paradox. Go back into the I didn't even talk about the getting further into designing Obsidian Star, which I know some people are very interested in. I'll do that tomorrow. I'll show off some stuff tomorrow as well. But guys, thank you very much for being part of the show. I really appreciate it. Kyler, I was here but quiet. You're fine. You're fine. I know people call it lurking. I don't know. That sounds a little bit. Lurking sounds like you're looking on, and I don't appreciate you looking at my privates. Um, But if I'm out in the public, you can look all you want. So yes, um, look for my channel on OnlyFans. It'll be in the comedy section. Uh, yes, you will be quite enamored by what happens over there. And no, you will not be lurking. You will be engaging in the the content that I will have created. Like I said, it's over by the comedy section. Um, yeah. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for everyone for allowing me um, to verbally vomit upon the interwebs and anything related to tabletop role playing games. Yeah, look forward to tomorrow. Talk about Obsidian Star, maybe the first 10 minutes or so, depending on how engaged you guys are, and then talk about some other things. Also, just if you have any ideas or subject matter or anything like that you'd like to get involved in, sure, I'd like to be able to talk about that as well. I have no problems with that. So guys, have a great one. All are welcome here. I appreciate your guys' attention. Again, your time is so valuable to me. I'm glad you can spend it here, especially with the inflation going up and the cost of everything. The fact that you're bothering to spend your valuable time over here is really appreciated. So thank you so much. But in return, I hope I can make some change uh, in your tabletop role playing and maybe even into your regular life. So guys, thank you very much. All are welcome. Please spread the word. Do the damn thing. Please like, share, subscribe, follow, become notified, and let others know about our safe space over here as well. Guys, have a great one. I will see thee later. Peace and tranquility.